those of you who don't know me, I'm an emeritus professor and I work in the Centre for Postgraduate Studies. And I've supervised a lot of doctoral theses, and I've done a lot of my own research, and all that has involved the analysis of qualitative data. I just don't do quantitative analysis. So my whole research career has been about qualitative analysis. So I see we have, let's see, 20, the sunlight shining on my screen, 30 or so participants, 36 participants, maybe 34 without a CP and me. So we've got 34 participants in today's session. I recognize some names. I don't recognize you all. I'm not going to go through and ask you to introduce yourselves because that would take time away from our workshop. So we'll get going shortly, and I've got a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to split you out into breakout rooms at some point. But just before we get going, I have a PowerPoint, but if you want to ask a question as I'm presenting, please just stick your hand up. You can raise your hand. If you can't get your hand to raise, you can put something in the chat box and I'll try to monitor both of them. But I will be looking at the side of my screen as I present for questions and anybody who wants to comment. So I have a presentation, if I've said, but let's try to make this as interactive as possible. Okay, everybody happy? Right, let's get going. So I'm going to share my screen, and here we go. I'm going to put up my PowerPoint presentation. Right, I hope you can all see that. Now, analysing qualitative data. The first thing we need to think about is theory, okay? And every piece of academic research draws on theory. Whether or not you acknowledge that, you will draw on theory. I've had students from science tell me, oh, my research doesn't have any theory. We don't do theory in science. It's not true. And I've checked this by asking scientists at Rhodes and other universities. It's just not true. It's just that the theory appears in different places, and I'll explain that in a minute. And of course, a lot of scientists nowadays are using qualitative data because they get involved in studies which involve people, and you inevitably end up interviewing them or talking to them, observing them in some way, and then you've got qualitative data. So regardless of what discipline, what your subject area is, your study will draw on theory. Now, theory is like a pair of glasses, and they're my glasses. I took a picture of them. Okay, so a theory is just like a pair of glasses. So when you put your glasses on, you see the world differently. I've got a typo there, it should be differently. So if I take my glasses off, I can't see. I actually can't even read the words on the computer screen. So when I put my glasses on, I see the world differently. I see things I wouldn't see without my glasses. So in my case, I can now see the words on the computer screen. The other things that glasses can do is that they can allow you to see things close up. They magnify, they make things bigger. So you'll see things you would miss, you wouldn't ever see. You see things close up, you see things differently. And the glasses might even allow you to see things from a particular perspective. So for example, you can get a film or a coating put on the glass, so it cuts out glare. And that means that if you look in water, you could see the fish, for example. So the glasses will allow you to see things from a particular perspective. Now, theory is exactly like that. Theory allows you to see the world differently. It allows you to see things you wouldn't see without it. It allows you to see things close up. And of course, you can have many, many different theories. You can use many different theories to look at the same thing. Some theories will give you a broad view. Some theories will bring you in and allow you to see things really closely. But they'll also give you a particular perspective on something. So if I give you an example, some theories, critical theories, they are theories which are concerned with social justice, with the need for a fair society. And so if you're drawing on a critical theory, you'll be looking at whatever you're looking at from a perspective which of social justice. So you'll be acknowledging the need for social justice, for fairness in the world around us as you draw on that theory. Okay, so for those of you who, well, you all wrote proposals, I presume, or you're writing proposals now, then your supervisors might be talking about theory and pushing you for the theory. And you must think at master's level in particular, what is all this theory? Why are they going on about theory? Well, it's because theory literally is the pair of spectacles that allows you to see the world differently. Okay, now theory can be overt and upfront. It can be in-your-face theory, okay? It might even have a name. And theories do have names. The theory I use is called legitimation code theory. Okay, so it might have a name. Sometimes it'll have the name of a theorist. So a theorist I often use is Bernstein. And we talk about Bernsteinian theory or a Bernsteinian approach. Okay. And in your proposal, you might write a section on your theory. In your thesis, you might actually write a chapter about your theory. So that's it if your theory is overt and upfront, in your face theory. But your theory can also be more hidden. It can also be covert. It can be not so upfront. Okay, but even if we're not academic, we've all got theory, and most of the theories that we use in our non-academic lives, they're these covert, these hidden theories, these informal theories. Now, in the natural sciences, theory is often hidden in the literature review. So in the natural scientists, researchers don't usually, in a proposal, write a section on theory, and in their theses, they don't write a chapter on theory. In the social sciences and the humanities, that's very common. So in the natural sciences, that's not the tradition, but it doesn't mean that the theory isn't there. There is nonetheless theory there. And some of my own research has involved tracking theory in a literature review in the sciences. And what the scientists typically do is they make a statement and then they put some references in brackets. And then they make another statement and they put some references in brackets, okay? And by making those statements, what they're actually doing is outlining a theory. So in the piece of work I did, what I could see, and I had a scientist, a natural scientist to help me, what I could see was that in the literature review, there was a whole theory about how fishes hear, how fish can hear. It's all got to do with a bone in their head, okay? So there was no section, that said theory, theoretical framework. It was there in the literature review. So you can't avoid the theory. Now, some theory is informal. It's not stated. And I see Ida Mbengo is in the room, and she's one of my doctoral students. And I've actually drawn from her study to talk about this informal theory. Now, Ida has formal theory. She's got very formal theory. She can name it. She's written a chapter about it. But she's studying a project which has got informal theory. So the project that Ida is studying, it aims to improve agricultural practices. It aims to improve farming in a rural area of the Transkei. So the assumption in the project, that is the theory the project is drawing on, is that teaching people new practices will lead them to adopt them. Okay, so in this particular project, one thing that I understand, I'm not an environmental scientist, I'm working with this PhD because I do understand very well the formal theory that Ida is working with. One of the things that the people in the villages have been taught is that when you let the cows graze on the land, every so often you need to close off the land from the cows so the grass can recover. And typically you do that when the rain comes, because the rain will make the grass grow. So you close that particular bit of land to the cows, you send the cows somewhere else, and then your grass grows. So the assumption, the theory in the project is that if you teach people to do it, if you say, this is what you have to do, people will do it, okay? And another assumption in this particular project is that the way funding is used, because there's money involved to run a project, obviously, the way funding is used can be regulated by written agreements with community members. So these written agreements say, we'll do this if you do that. We'll agree to do this if you'll agree to do that. So you get a written contract, okay? So the assumption is that these people in the village, they'll understand the value and the formality and the need to adhere to this written agreement. So those assumptions, and I haven't mentioned them all, they actually are a theory underpinning the project. I doubt the project members ever discussed that theory up front. They didn't write it down, but that theory is there. You can see it informing the project. So it's an informal project, okay? So what I'm saying is that, first of all academic research has theory. Doesn't matter which subject area, whether it's the sciences, the humanities, whether it's commerce, whatever, there will be theory there. And theory is important because it's like my glasses. It allows me to see the world differently. It allows me to see things that I wouldn't see otherwise. It allows me to see things close up or from a different perspective, from a different angle. So academic work draws on theory. And sometimes that theory is upfront, in your face. Researchers write about it, name it. Other times it's more hidden. In the sciences, typically it's hidden in the literature review. But theory can also be informal. It's not the stuff of books. It's the stuff of everyday life. It's informal theory. Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute. Just let me pause my share and ask you, does everybody get that? Does anybody have any questions? If not, stick your hand up. Indicate to me. Everybody happy? See, we've got someone in the chat box. Okay, Tabang Sive saying, you get it. Okay, and Nico and Ngubeni, do you want to talk to us?
Hello, Chris. How are you?
I'm well, and you?
I'm well. I had a connection problem. I couldn't hear some of the, especially when we were talking about theory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't hear clearly because I was cutting and coming back, cutting and coming back.
Okay. Asipe, does the CPGS record these things? Maybe I should record now. Okay, I'm not sure if it is being.
Yes. So we record and then send the recording to everyone that is registered via email, and also we always post them on YouTube.
Okay, but just to fill you in, Naiko, what I said was every piece of academic research draws on theory, regardless of whether the researcher acknowledges that or not. Sometimes the theory is more hidden. Other times the theory is in your face because the researcher writes about it. The researcher writes a chapter or something about it. And theory is important in academic research because it's like my glasses, right? If I take my glasses off, I can't see. I can't see the words on the screen. When I put the glasses on, my glasses allow me to see the world differently, and they'll allow me to see things I couldn't otherwise see. So that's why we use theory in academic research. Nossi, you've got your hand up.
Yes, Prof. Thank you so much. I'm feeling new in the academic research, and maybe my question is quite obvious to others, but I think I need a bit more clarity. I'm asking this because I've recently learned that methodology and methods are quite different things. So I wanted to know if a theoretical framework is the same thing as what we're talking about now as a theory.
Good question, Nossi, good question. And look, it's difficult for me to answer that, even me, and I'm old and I've been doing research for years and I'm a professor. Okay. I personally would define your methodology as your theory of reality and how it can be known. Okay, so what do you think truth is? What do you think reality is? All right. Do you think that reality exists independently of human thought and action, and that the job of the researcher is to uncover that reality, to discover the truth? Or do you think human beings are involved in making reality, in making truth? Okay, you can have many different views on what reality is. And you can also have many different views about how you can come to know reality. Okay, so if you think of the natural scientists, that they start with what they can see, what they can measure, what they can observe. And they do all those measurements, and then often they'll use statistical inferencing to prove something. Okay, so the idea that you can know by observing, by measuring, and by using statistics is a theory of how you can know. It's your epistemology. So I would say that your methodological framework is about what you think reality is and how reality can be known. And another way in the area I work in, and there's a man called Phil Carr-Specken, and he wrote a book some years ago now, and he says, you know, learning about research is really, really difficult because when you start learning about research, it's like you go to a party and there's lots of people in the room, and all the people in the room are having conversations. There's different groups of people having conversations. It's a big party. And you walk around the different groups and you think they're all talking about something different. But a bit later, you realize that actually they're all talking about the same thing, but they're using different words. And he says research is like that. Often we use different words to talk about the same things. And that's why it's difficult to learn how to be a researcher. So another way to think about what I've just described as methodology is your substantive theory. It's the theory, and I like to think of that like the engine in a car. The car won't go without an engine. Your research won't go without an engine. So you need your methodology, which is your theory of what reality is and how it can be known, to make your research go. But it's not enough just to have the engine in the car. You then need petrol and oil. Okay, so you need another kind of theory to make the engine actually work. And sometimes that theory is called explanatory theory. Okay, so in that case, what you could say, okay, so your methodology is like your substantive theory, and your theoretical framework is like your explanatory theory. Okay, but all I can say, Nossi, is people are often talking about the same things, and I've just given you an understanding that makes sense to me. It helps me to understand what I'm doing at any one time, but you might find other people will start to use different words for what I've described. Okay, I hope that helps. All right, but one thing you've pointed out for us, Nossi, is that there are different kinds of theory. Yeah, of course there are. I mean, I've mentioned overt theory, covert theory, and then we've just talked about the difference between a theoretical framework and a methodological framework. And people also talk about a conceptual framework. Methodological framework, conceptual framework. I use the word substantive theory, explanatory theory. Okay, there are different kinds of theory. Okay, explanatory, substantive, theory that explains your methodology, theory that explains something else. Okay, but don't get worried. I'm still struggling, and I'm much older than you. Okay, right. If you're happy, then let's go back to the presentation. I'll keep checking that you're with me. Okay. So when you think of theory, and this also goes back to another term that people will use, your conceptual framework. Theory is joined up concepts. Concepts are ideas, they're abstractions, okay? So here I've got three concepts that we typically use in the social sciences. Structure. And I would describe structure as something that distributes access to the riches of the world, to the goods of the world. So you could say education is a structure, because if you manage to get an education, you're more likely to get a better job, and you're more likely to earn more money, and therefore you can buy a house, you can buy a car, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so that idea of structure, it's an abstract, something that distributes access to the goods of the world. It's a concept, okay? Another concept that we typically use in the social sciences is the idea of culture. And people will describe culture in different ways. They'll define it in different ways. Another concept that we use a lot in the social sciences is agency. And agency is about the ability of human beings to act, to do things, to think things, okay? So you have all sorts of different theories that use these concepts, right? The different theories will have the same concepts, but what they will do is they'll join them up in different ways. They will link them in different ways, okay? So theory, my definition of it is joined up concepts, okay? And I've given you an example there. And just while we're at it, sometimes people talked about a conceptual framework. I suppose one way to define a conceptual framework is that you put concepts down, you decide on the concepts and you join them up. So you don't yet have an official theory. It's not a theory from a book. It's not a theory developed by a researcher. And you might have a conceptual framework, and then you set out to try to test it to see if you yourself can produce theory, a joined up theory as a result of your research. Okay. Now, what a theorist does is the theorist identifies the concepts and they explains how they relate to each other. Okay, so I don't know. Okay, I use the theory a lot of a woman called Margaret Archer. And she uses those concepts of structure, culture, and agency. Okay, but the way she joins them up, the way she relates them to each other is different to the way other theorists will join them up. So some of you who've done sociology might know the work of Giddens, structuration theory. The way Giddens joins up structural and cultural and agency is different to the way Archer joins them up. Okay, so a theorist, those big names, they identify the concepts and they explain how they're joined up, how they relate to each other. So all this stuff on theory is because it's key to your qualitative analysis, okay? You can't analyze qualitative data without theory, okay? Everybody got that? So the theory is something that that's why your supervisor is saying you need a theoretical framework or whatever they're calling it. You need to find theory. It's because we use theory to see the world, and analysis is about seeing the world. Okay. So some students will write about theory in their proposal, and typically they then forget all about it when they come to the analysis. So they've written a beautiful proposal with lots of theory in it. And then very excited, they go out, they get the data, and then they come back and they begin to analyze the data. And my question as a supervisor is, where's your theory? What's happened? Where's the theory gone? So when you've got theory for your study, what you do with your data is you look for the concepts that are in the theory. Remember, your theory is joined up concepts, linked together concepts. So when you look at your data, you look for the concepts in your data, and then you look for the way they're joined up, the way they are linked together. Okay, and I'll give you an example of this in a minute. Okay. And as you do this, as you look for your theory, remember, you don't have to confirm theory. You as a researcher, you begin and you say, I'm going to be using this theory. And most often you will end up seeing the way the theory works, understanding the theory and agreeing with the theory. But the point of your research is not to confirm your theory. It may be that you see things in your data that your theory doesn't expect to see. Or you'll see that things are linked in slightly different ways. That's wonderful if you get that, because that's the way we build new knowledge. That's the way we come to challenge theories. okay? So your theory is critical to your research. Your theory is made up of concepts that the theorists link together in some way. And what you do when you look at your data is you try to find the concepts in the data. You try to see the concepts, okay? It's like you've got a pile of money on the table and you try to see all the 2 rand coins. Put all the 2 rand coins over here, put the 5 rand coins over here, put the 1 rand coins over there, okay? So the 5 rand, the 1 rand, the 2 rand, they're like the concepts. What you're trying to do is to see those concepts in your data, okay? And then you're going to see how those concepts link together in your data. Okay. Now I'm going to stop there. Okay. I'm going to stop there and I'm going to invite you to pause for a moment. Okay, I'm going to use a piece of data to explain what I've been talking about. But does everybody know how free writing works? Have you done free writing because you've been to previous workshops in the CPGS? Do you know how it works? Okay. I'm going to, if you don't know, I'm going to tell you about free writing now. Okay, so how does free writing work? Well, first of all, you identify a question. And the question I'm asking you is, what is your theory? What are the concepts in it? Okay. So what you do in a piece of free writing is you have that question in your head and then you start writing, okay? And I'm going to ask you to write for 5 minutes and I'm going to look at my watch and I'm going to time you. And when the time is up, I'll ask you to stop writing. You can write in any language. If you want to use your home language, that's great. You don't have to use English. And you don't worry about spelling, grammar, all that stuff. As long as you can read it, that's okay. I'm not going to read it. Nobody else is going to read it. And what you try to do is empty your head onto the screen, okay, or paper. And you do that, you just keep writing, keep writing. And when the time is up, I'll tell you, and you can just stop, okay? And what this free writing does, for those of you who've never done it, is writing slows your thought. It makes your thought more slow. And it allows you to capture your thought. So you put it on the paper, you put it on the screen, and then you can go back and you can look at it. And because the free writing is for a short period, and because you're under pressure, it focuses your thought. And you'd be surprised how much a 5-minute period of free writing will get you focused and allow you to see what you know and what you don't know, okay? So you're all postgraduate students. Some of you are at different spaces. So in your studies, different places. So the question is, what is your theory and what are the concepts? If you're right at the beginning of your study and you haven't yet done your proposal, think of a theory and think of the concepts in the theory. Does everybody understand the task that I'm asking you to do? Okay. Have you all got that piece of paper or that? Can you switch to a screen and write something? Okay, it's now 15:35. I'm going to stop you writing at 15:40. So write and keep writing. Okay, everyone, stop. Just take your fingers off the keyboard or put your pen down. Stop. The 5 minutes were up, and I hope you've all now got some words, all right? And you let your thoughts flow, and you've captured those thoughts on the screen, and now you can revisit them, okay? And I hope that in those few minutes, you started to experience the way free writing can focus your thinking. Okay, now I'm going to ask Asipe to help me. Asipe, you still there? Asipe?
Yes, Prof.
Okay, can you help me do some breakout rooms?
Okay.
So I see we've got 58. Let's try 12 rooms, or maybe
Okay.
11 rooms, okay? 11 rooms. What I want you to do in the breakout rooms, and Asipe will put you into them now, is for a short period, and I hope I'll be able to go around the rooms. I don't know whether you can organize that for me, Asipe. I hopefully will be able to go around the rooms and listen to what you're talking about. But I want you to talk to other people in the breakout room about the theory and the concepts, okay? And indeed just discuss anything that what I've said about theories and concepts. But what I hope you'll do in the breakout room is say to other people, this is the theory I'm using. These are the concepts that I need to look for. Everybody got it? Okay, Asipe, could you do the breakout rooms? We'll do 10 minutes in the breakout rooms. So I'll bring you back, or Asipe will bring you back at 41, 51, say 53, 15:53, okay? Thank you, Asipe.
I see that there's, just please check if everyone is in the breakout rooms. So I've been assigning them.
I'm not seeing breakout rooms on my screen yet.
Okay, let me do it quickly.
Still no rooms, I don't think.
I'm assigning to room 4 now. So we making progress. Okay.
And
Hi, Prof. So I've done the breakout rooms. Can you see on the 8?
Sipe, can you still see? We've still got people in the main room.
Okay, let me just check because
I can still see Stanley, Sive, Sipelele, Namava, Morgan. Sometimes they just don't see the, those people who aren't in a breakout room, can you look at the bottom of your screen and you should see 4 little blocks. And it says join breakout room. If you click on that, it'll say you've been assigned to breakout room and a number, and you click on the join. Okay. We've still got Christopher, Damola, Indipile, Irene, Morgan. Look for those 4 little blocks. Stephanie, look for those 4 little blocks at the bottom of the screen. Click and it'll tell you which room to go to. If you're not in a room, put your cursor at the bottom of the room and you'll see right at the bottom of the Zoom screen, it says join breakout room, 4 little squares. If you click on 4 little squares, it should say you have been assigned to breakout room and a number. And then you can click on the blue box and join the room. So, Damola, can you not manage to join? Do you want to talk to, if you just put all the people who aren't in a breakout room, you're now in the main room and you can talk to me at a CPay. Do you have a problem or what? Can you not hear? Anybody, just talk. I can see Damola and Dipile, Irene, Morgan, Namavula, Stanley, Stephanie. I'm not quite sure what's happening, Sipe, with the people who aren't in the rooms.
Hi, Prof. I see that there are people, so when it comes to unassigned, it says 0, so they need to request. So
can you assign them? Yeah. You can generally assign them to a room. If you put your cursor on their name, you can assign them to a room. I should have asked you to make me can you make me co-host?
Okay.
I'll see if I can do it. Okay, let's see if I can do it now. Okay. I can't see how to do it. Usually where it says unassigned, you can put them in a room.
Hi, Prof. So when I click onto them in terms of more, it doesn't really show. So what I'm going to do is, because I'm recording on the cloud, I'm going to make you host, then you make me co-host.
Okay, well, you can put me back and just take the host away from me. That's fine.
Okay.
I'm going to tell them we're going to close the rooms.
So I've made you host now. If
They made me
possible.
host,
Yes.
okay. I still can't see how to do it. Oh, unassigned. I've only got one person unassigned. So
Yeah.
Damola, that's you.
And the
The
participants.
other people,
survey.
they have not joined. That's the problem. So
Mhm.
Damola is in room 7. Morgan Stanley is in room 6. They've obviously not managed to get themselves into the room. Never mind, we all learn.
I think the others are starting to request, Prof. Or did you manage to find it? Because there's about 5 now, from 7 to 5.
Yeah, maybe they found it. I can only
There's
see
only 3.
Damola, Morgan, and Stephanie. They finally got it, I think. Stephanie, you should be in room 4. Can you move your cursor around if you're not looking? I know it's late now, but just for next time. You should, or at the bottom of the screen, look for that little block of 4 squares, and it should tell you to join the room. Okay, I'm going to close the rooms. Okay, everybody. I can see you're all coming back now into the main room. We had a few people who had difficulty getting into the breakout rooms. I'm sorry about that. Technology rarely works perfectly, but never mind. So I hope that in the rooms, you had an opportunity to talk to other people about your theory. Does it have a name? But most importantly, to say what concepts are in the theory. Okay, Ida, I'm going to pick on you. Ida, as I said, is my student. And I know she knows her theory pretty well. So Ida, do you want to just quickly tell us the theory you're using and the concepts?
Okay, Prof. First of all, for my explanatory theory, which I explained to my group, I'm using the climate smart agricultural theories, where I'm looking at crop adaptation and livestock adaptation. And as far as these concepts are concerned, for crops, we're looking at rotational grazing. For livestock, we're looking at rotational grazing, camp closure, fodder production, and so on. Those are the concepts. Then
Okay,
for crops, we're looking at issues of are you using intercropping, zero tillage, and so on. And the idea is that if all these are adopted by farmers, then they would be resilient against climate change. But I also have a substantive theory, which is now Margaret Archer. And according to Archer, we are saying that reality is not about the empirical, what we see and measure, but we have reality based on empirical, which is the field of the natural scientists. Then we've got events that take place among the farmers before they adopt. Then lastly, we've got reality. And it is in terms of reality where we are actually finding that there are probably more things that are at play in terms of what the farmers go through before they adopt or decide not to adopt.
That's great. Thank you, Ida. I'm sorry for putting you on the spot. So Ida used the word substantive theory and explanatory theory. So her substantive theory, she said it was talking about reality. Then she used that smart agriculture, and she was talking about that. And just to try to stress the importance of theory, Ida's registered in environmental science. I'm not an environmental scientist. My PhD is in linguistics, and all my research has been done in higher education studies. So why am I supervising this PhD? Well, I can supervise the PhD because I know the theory. I know the big theories, the substantive theories that she's using, okay? That's how important the theory is in research. Okay, so thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Any questions or comments? No hands going up.
Sorry, I just want to ask.
Yeah.
So if you are not sure of a theory to use, what are the ways? What is that you could do? Because I have been in and out on different theories because my work is want to explore issues of unemployment, and I'm interested to understand the lived experience of Black men who are standing along the side of the road, who are unemployed. So there are a lot of theories, but I've not. There's one that I've picked up recently, which is the Marxist political economy. It has concept. It has concept that relates to labor, capital, class structures, and all of that. So I'm not sure what do you do to check the best theory to utilize in your study?
Remember, a theory allows you to see the world differently. And the big question is what you're interested in seeing. What are you looking at? What really, and which theory will best allow you to see what you want to look at? So these men standing at the side of the road who are unemployed, what is it about the men that you want to know? What is it you want to look at? Is it their economic prospects? Is it the sense of despair? I mean, it must be terrible not to have a job and not to be able to feed yourself and your family. What is it that you want to look at? Are you coming from a social justice perspective? So you choose your theory according to what you want to look at. Okay, and what you need to do, in the first part of a proposal or in the introduction to your thesis, what you do is you define the problem. You say, this is the problem, And what you're actually doing is saying, this is what I want to look at. What you need to do, Anneli, is find out for yourself what it is about these men that you really want to look at. What is it that you really want to know? And then you have to find a theory that will allow you to look at that. Okay? And often reading theory and thinking about the problem, you do it at the same time and they'll emerge. But the other thing, of course, you can do is go to your supervisor and say, this is what I really want to know. And I'm struggling about which theory will best allow me to see that. Supervisors generally will be very happy to have a question like that. Very, very happy to have a question like that. Okay.
Right, thank you.
Right, we've got just half an hour and I want to get on to some actual analysis now. So remember, I said when we, sorry, Apelele is just asking a question. What is the difference between explanatory theory and substantive theory? So Apelele, substantive theory is your understanding of what truth is, what reality is, and how it can be known. Okay? And two other big words that are connected with that theory, substantive theory, are sometimes ontology and epistemology. So your ontology is what you believe truth is or reality is. Your epistemology is how you believe truth can be known. So your substantive theory is those two things together. And I explained substantive theory as being like the engine in a car. The car won't go without an engine, okay? So you've got to have this theory to make the study move, the engine move. But then you can have an engine in the car, but it's still not enough. The engine won't move without explanatory theory. So your explanatory theory is a different level of theory, which is like the oil or the petrol that you put into the car. Okay. Now, I can talk about this stuff because I'm much older than you are, and I've been doing this work for many, many years. So please, please don't be daunted by all these words. All right. And remember that often we're using the same words, different words for the same things. You will get it slowly over time. You will get it. Okay. I'm going to share my screen because what I want us to do is to use a bit of actual analysis. Wait a moment. Right, and I'm looking for document. There we go. Okay, I hope you can see something now on the screen. It's a Word document, right? And this is actually, I borrowed a bit of data from one of my students, my student who is about to graduate next month. So here is an extract from her interview, okay? So my student was the interviewer, and she said, so first question, and she's talking to learners in a school. Can you remember where you learned to read and who taught you? And one of her participants, whose name is Tembi, says, yes, ma'am, I do. I was in primary grade 2 and I entered a competition. Yeah, even though I didn't know how to read, but I was just curious to see what was going on. And I entered this competition. And my teacher said, why are you here at the competition day? And I was like, no, ma'am, I just want to see what was going on. And she was like, okay, let's go to a private room quickly. And she taught me at a very short time and I learned. I'm actually a very fast learner, so I'm not surprised. So she taught me a book. She read the book to me and she was like, can you read it for me? And I was like, yes, ma'am. And I read and she was so, so surprised. And I was so proud of myself. Okay, so here's a bit of data. Now, suppose, look at the top here. Suppose your theory draws on the concepts of experiences, events, and social structures. Okay, let's just begin by looking for experiences. Okay, remember Tembi, she's talking about herself. So can you see in this data any experiences? Do you want to stick your hands up? Can you see an experience? Any offers? Okay, I'll get going for the sake of time. Okay. How about that? I was just curious. The experience of being curious. Okay. Can you see anything else related to Tembi's curiosity? Well, how about that? I just wanted to see what was going on. Okay. What I can see in the data is the experience of this young girl being curious. Okay. If I move on, what about if I come to the end and it's another one? Tembi says, I was so proud of myself. Okay. Pride, it's an experience, isn't it? Yeah. And I can go back and I can look at other examples where Tembi is expressing her pride. And she says, you could code that as well. I'm a fast learner, so I'm not surprised. You could say, Tembi's proud of herself because she's a fast learner. Okay. So what I've done in that very, very simple bit of coding is I took the concept of experiences and I looked in my data for experiences. Okay. And what I did was I marked it. And I'm just using Word, so I've just used a highlighter in Word to mark it. Okay. Can you all see, does anybody have any questions? Would you disagree with what I've marked in green, that they are instances of experiences in the data? Tembi is talking about her experiences. Okay. Right. No questions? So what I'm going to go now and look at is for events. Okay, you know, everybody knows what an event was, right? So can you see any events in that bit of data? What about that? A competition, it's an event, right? A competition takes place on a particular day. People enter a competition. So it's an event. So what I can do is I can color that, right? Let's color it pink. Okay. And I could go on. Can I see anything else there? There's a competition again. All right. What about this one? Let's go to a private room. Think about it, entering a private room. The teacher took this girl aside. She took her into a separate classroom. And you can say that's an event. The teacher taking her aside into this private room, this separate classroom, is an event. So I'm going to color it pink. I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm just going to color it pink. Okay. So what I've done, events are concepts. I've just looked for events in that little bit of data. Now, social structures. I'm going to start looking for those. Now, a social structure, I defined a social structure as something that gives you access to the goods of the world. I said education's a structure, okay? So can you see any structures in that piece? Well, let's find another
Primary
color.
school. Primary school.
Primary school, yes. There you go. Primary school, I can code that as a structure. Great stuff. Can you say anything else? It's possible you could also code the competition as a structure. Possible, because if you win the competition, you'll get a prize or you'll get recognition. So what I would do using my, if I were doing it with Word, and many of you will be using a program like Envivo to code, where it's better, what I would do is repeat the word competition, and I would just color it something different. I'd color it pink and I'd color it yellow, okay? Now, what I've done with this example, and it's a very simple example, is my theory, and I'm actually talking here, it's a theory of reality, if you like. It's a substantive theory, but I've colored those in different colors, first of all. But all I did was they're my concepts, the concepts in my theory. And what I did was I read my data, and where I thought I was seeing one of the concepts, I colored it, okay? But I had the concepts at the top of the page to remind me, and I just colored the concepts. This is what you would call a first pass at the data. You go through the data the first time, okay? The first pass. And what's really important is that you don't agonize about, oh, what is it? Sometimes it's gut feeling as well, because you're going to go through the data more than once. Any rigorous researcher will go through the data more than once. But what you start to do is simply mark up the concepts. You start to code the concepts, okay? But it's your theory that gives you the categories for your coding, okay? And then what you could start to do then, suppose you did this interview, and the interview with this girl lasted, I think, about 10 minutes, but it was much longer when it came to a transcript. I think it was about 4 or 5 pages. Once you've been through it once, you can leave it for a bit, and then you can go through it again, and you can go through it the second time, and you can see whether you still agree with your first time analysis. So you have reiterative passes at the data. You go through it several times, okay? Now, I haven't done this here. I haven't even mentioned the theory, but I said the theory joins up the concepts, okay? So what we can possibly start to see in this analysis is very tentative. I'm not sure, it's tentative. And as a researcher, you make your best guess, and then you're going to try to confirm as you work with more and more data. So this girl's experiences of school have generally been positive. So I'm linking experiences to particularly the social structure of school as being positive, okay? So just to recap what I did, and as I said, this is very simple. I've really chosen a very, very, very simple analysis. you identify the concepts in your theory. And that's why I asked you to think about the concepts in theory when you did the free writing. Okay, so somebody was talking about Marxist theory. Well, Marx talks about structure. He talks about superstructure, structure. He talks about labor. He talks about all sorts of things. So what are the concepts that Marx uses? Write those concepts down. Then you start looking at your data, and what you will do is you will start to mark your concepts, okay? And the other thing, of course, that you have to keep in your mind is what your research question is. So what is the question you're trying to answer here? But when you first do it, just try it, just do it. If you're going to be a good researcher, if you're going to be a rigorous researcher, you need to do your analysis more than once, and in order to do that, you will firm up your analysis. You will see different things on the second time. You will see some things that are the same. And the other thing, of course, that happens is that if you work with more than one interview, then you start to see how the same things come up in the different interviews. And then you can be more sure that what you're seeing is indeed what you need to be seeing. Okay, I'm going to stop after that very simple analysis. Does anybody want to ask me any questions? Just sort of get it. Use the concepts and look for the concepts. So what I often find students do is they'll get the data and they've got the theory, they know the theory, and then suddenly they'll start looking for things like themes in the data. And my question always is, what's a theme? Where does the theme fit in with the theory that you're using? Okay, so it's the concepts that you look for in your data. Let's go back to my, if I can find it, my PowerPoint. Wait a moment, because I have got some more to say. Okay. Sorry, excuse me, I'm just having difficulty sharing my screen again. I've got too much open on my own screen. That's the problem. Okay. So there we are. When you start analyzing your data, you look for the concepts in your theory and you look for the way that they're linked together. And that's what I just tried to do for you with that very simple analysis. Okay. And as I told you earlier, remember, you don't have to confirm your theory. It may be that you see things that your theory doesn't expect to see. That's fine. You've got to code them in a different color if you like. But seeing things that you didn't expect to see will be the way that new knowledge is built. Okay, that's the example I've just used. Okay, just one last bit, and we've only got 10 minutes. So as a researcher, your aim, sorry, Nussi, do you want to ask a question? Your hand's up, or is it the same hand from before?
No, it's not, it's the same, Prof. Thank you.
Okay.
I think you've explained it very clearer for me now. I really understand it. But I wanted to, before I leave the session, just to understand that the concept is different to components, because what I've been asked to do under my theoretical framework is to come up with components. So that's components.
Components. I think that's probably the same. I'm not sure of how your supervisor's using it.
Oh, okay.
I think it's probably the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The components of
thank you so much, Prof.
The concepts in the theory. I think so.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
so your
thank you.
supervisor's telling you
Thank
to
you
do
so
what
much.
I'm trying to do, to tell you. Okay,
Okay.
right.
Sure.
This next bit, I think, is really important. And I think if you can get this bit, you'll be well on your way to writing a good thesis. When you do research, your aim is to make knowledge claims, okay? And a knowledge claim is a statement about what you, the researcher, believes to be true, okay? However you define truth, a knowledge claim is what you, the researcher, believes to be true, right? And knowledge claims are always supported by evidence. You can't just say things, not in academic research. You need evidence for what you say, okay? Now, in the early part of your thesis or your proposal, the evidence comes from the literature, and that's what the references are. So references are the evidence for what you are saying is the case, okay? References are the evidence for what you are saying is the case. And when you do your literature review, what you're being asked to do is to write a series of knowledge claims, and each of the claims is about what the literature says is true. But then the references, the literature, comes in as evidence to support those claims. As your thesis moves on, you get to the analysis chapter, and your evidence comes from your data, okay? So what you're asked to do with analysis is you're asked to come to knowledge claims, make knowledge claims, statements about what you believe is true, but your data is the evidence for the claim, okay? Now, here's what I did on the basis of that tiny little bit of interview that I just showed you. So here, I'm going to make a knowledge claim, and this is further on in the analysis, right? I'm presuming that, you know, where have I gone? I'm presuming that the interview has gone through all the interview transcripts, analyzed all the transcripts. So here you go. In the study, learners showed their willingness to exercise their agency on numerous occasions. Okay? Agency is your ability to act, your ability to do things. Tembi, for example, explained how she'd heard about a competition at her school and had got along to see what was happening as she was curious. Now look what I did there. Here's the example that I used earlier, I found earlier. And I'm using that to support the statement that I make, the truth claim, the knowledge claim that I make. So what you've got to do with your data analysis eventually is you need to make claims as a result of working with this data over and over again, but then your data comes in to support, to hold up your claim, okay? And if I do another one, I could say in the study, learners' experiences of being acknowledged for their achievements were unfailingly positive. Now I'm talking about experiences, right? Tembi, for example, describes how when she was able to show her teacher she could read, the teacher was so proud, so surprised, and I was proud of myself. So you can see here in the commas, I'm quoting from my data, and I'd have to reference the interview itself, okay? And Tembi is a pseudonym. I've used a pseudonym. That's not the girl's real name. Okay, so what you're doing with your data analysis, eventually, you're coming to make statements on the basis of your analysis about what you believe is true. But you take from your data to support what you say. Your data becomes the evidence for what you believe to be true. Okay? And one of the things that often happens when students first do research, they just end up describing the data. But your ability to make knowledge claims will draw on your understanding of your theory. You go back to your theory, and your theory will help you make those knowledge claims, because your theory is giving you a view of the world, remember? And because of that, you won't just be describing the data again. You won't just be repeating what's in the transcripts in another way. What you'll be doing is making these statements about what you believe to be true, and your data comes in as the evidence for the claim. I've got a few more things to say in the last 5 minutes. So in order to come to these knowledge claims, in order to be able to make these in order to make these knowledge claims, you need to trawl through your data over and over again. You're not going to be able to read the data once. You're going to sit with the data over and over and over again. And sometimes, it actually helps to transcribe your own data, because as you're transcribing, you're actually starting your analysis. All right. And what you then have to start to do is generalize across smaller pieces of data, and ensure that you're not making a claim on the basis of only one instance. You've got to have enough data to support the claim. You've got to ensure that your evidence supports the claim. And what you start to do, remember, in that example of Tembi's interview, when we identified experiences, events, and structures, we were just identifying the concepts. When I start to make my claims, what I've done is I've joined up the concepts. Okay, I've joined up, if I go particularly to that one, I've joined up the structure of the school, the competition, and Tembi's curiosity. I've sort of joined them up in a way in doing that. Okay, so you start off with the concepts, but then your theory allows you to start joining up your analysis of these concepts and link them together in order to make knowledge claims. There's still more to think about, and maybe we should have another session. I'm certainly happy to have another session, and we can talk to Sue McKenna, Prof. McKenna, about this. Your data, your qualitative data, may well consist of the perceptions or the opinions of others. So if we think of Tembi, the interviewer asked Tembi a question, and Tembi answered the question. Okay. So when Tembi spoke, what was it? She was giving us perception. She was giving us her opinion. What was she giving us? It was her view, right? So one thing you have to consider is, what is the status of what people say in knowledge making? So what Tembi says, what status does what Tembi says have in my ability to make a knowledge claim? So Tembi's giving us her view of the world. Are perceptions reality? Are they just one form of reality? When Tembi talks about school, I mean, maybe actually she couldn't read the whole book. I would be doubtful that Tembi could read after one simple bit of instruction from a teacher. I think we've got a bit of golden reality here, golden perception there on Tembi's part. But we have to accept what Tembi says. But at the same time, are perceptions reality, or are they just one form of reality? And if that is the case, if Tembi is giving us one view of the world and other people might be giving another view of the world, how do you manage that as a researcher? So you've probably read about triangulation or crystallization or verification in the research handbooks. And what that might mean is that you end up balancing different views against the others, one against the other. Tembi said this, somebody else said that. Okay, what do I think is the truth here? Okay. So you have to be careful, particularly with qualitative data, in thinking about what the status of the data is. The data could be just people's opinions, just people's perceptions of the world. And that requires you to think about how you, the researcher, are going to manage it. So, for example, you might be interpreting the perceptions of others. And the perceptions of these people are interpretations of the world. So you're involved in interpreting interpretations of the world. You are interpreting an interpretation. And the books call that the double hermeneutic. So one of the things you have to consider as a researcher is how you manage your own interpretative processes. How do you ensure you're not biased and that the knowledge claims that you make aren't influenced by who you are, by your positionality in the world? Okay. So the analysis isn't just about the coding. And I tried to explain that you code on the basis of the concepts, and then you start to see how those concepts link together. You've got other things to think about. And one is the need to think about bias and the fact that your coding, your interpretation might be influenced by your position in the world, by who you are. Okay, so there's a lot to think about when you do that analysis. But what you can be sure, and I suspect that you find all this very daunting at the moment, but what you can be sure is that as your findings emerge, as you start to see things, it's enormously exciting. It's like, wow, wow, wow. And that's what grabs you as a researcher. That's why research is so satisfying, so wonderful. Okay. So if I can end this now and just say to you, please, 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 don't be frightened, don't be daunted. You've got to get going. Everybody is in the same position as you, but if you can hold on to that theory and that identification of concepts in your theory and try to begin by seeing those in the data, you're on the right road. Okay, I see we've got a couple of Rita, okay. So it's talking about theory, okay. And what I can't go right back, but what Rita says is true. If you can answer your question with one theory, don't bring in other theories. Sometimes people keep piling theories into a thesis. Try to keep the best research. It's lean and mean and very focused. So if you can do it with one theory, you don't need other theories. Just stick to a theory. And people say, oh, but I like this theory too. Yeah, well, okay, you've got a whole research career ahead of you. You can use the other theory that you like to look at a different question. Okay. So on that note, and I've only had an hour and a half, and it's been a huge topic, but I hope I've given you some little insights into data analysis, the analysis of qualitative data. My personal hope is that I hope I've given you some reassurance about all the doubts you feel. They're not uncommon. And that what you've got to do is you've got to get stuck in. You've got to get going on the analysis, okay? And if I could give you just one more piece of advice from me as a supervisor, I prefer my students to ask me questions and to get stuck. Much better to ask me questions than to get stuck. And I would never consider any question to be stupid. And I also prefer my students to come to me sooner rather than later and say to me, I think I'm seeing this. Okay? And I'll say, why? And I would much prefer my students to come to me on that basis, so I know what they're doing. I can start to guide them if I think they're in the wrong direction. So you're not in this alone. You are doing research under supervision. And I think most supervisors would prefer you to speak to them sooner rather than later. Okay, so colleagues, I've gone over. Good luck. And there's an evaluation. Asipe gave you a link to an evaluation. It's right at the top, hey, Asipe? Right at the top of the chat box. Please go back, fill in the evaluation. And I don't know what the plans are for the CPGS, but if you want to follow up on this session, I'd be happy to do one. Okay, so goodbye, everybody. Okay.
Goodbye, Prof. Thank you so much for this informative session. Just to announce that tomorrow we have another session with Prof. Sumakena on applying for grants and scholarships, same time, 3 p.m. to 4:30. The link has been attached to the same communique that was sent with regards to this. I will send another reminder when I'm sending the recording. So thank you so much, Prof, for gracing us with your presence and also for sharing that informative session on analyzing qualitative data. We really learned a lot. I echo some of the sentiments, in fact, all of the sentiments that are in the chats about how this session was much more needed for us all as postgraduate students. Colleagues, have a great Wednesday evening. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.